Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Baseball Podcast. This is me, Joey P, Joe Pisapia, and today we got a really fun show for you. Everybody's always talking about sleepers, but should you be really buying all the names that everybody's talking about? Well, we're going to tell you today, and to help us do it, of course, is my boy, the Welsh, and one of the best there is in the business. He is the head of MLB content at FTN Fantasy. He's the host of the FTN Fantasy Baseball Podcast, and he's a 72-time NFBC NFFC League winner. He's Vlad Sedler, everybody. Vlad, I mean, after 50, it's got to get boring, like taking out the trash, right? We just keep winning these things. Like, do you even care? Do you even get excited about it anymore?
Always do, but not as exciting as coming on a show with you guys, and especially, Welsh. I see quite frequently. Joe, I haven't seen you in ages, other than on the tube. Every time I turn on my TV, there's Joe.
Right.
But
I have a face for radio, but it's all over television nowadays too. And we're always happy to come on and hang out with you anytime as well. Vlad is one of, I've always said this, there's a core group of people I would say who are the best fantasy players. And Vlad, I always say, is one of them. Adam Ronis is another guy that I've been in so many expert league finals in. There's certain people that are just like, if you make the playoffs, you're going to see those names in certain leagues. And Vlad is one of those guys. And I think you're the perfect person for this show because we are, Welsh, talking about some of these trendy picks. And sometimes these picks are guys that work out. We just did a show. We were talking about Kyle Bradish, right? And we were talking about he was the trendy name last year as a sleeper. And in April, it looked like crap because he had a 6 ERA. And then people cut him. And if you held on, things got really good. So sometimes patience is also important with some of these names. But Welsh, it is really important. It does feel like to start to attach your feelings to some of these trendy names and know whether or not the price is too high or too low for you.
Yeah, this is also something where I know, it's funny. We've had people like in all different platforms of content that I do. So people still like, man, it seems kind of early. Everything seems kind of early. It's not. It's not too early because baseball is another beast. But some of the deficiencies of baseball to fantasy football are sometimes the amount of work that goes into fantasy baseball, but that's also what makes it so special. The work that you put into the payoff is something I know that football definitely has it, but it is something just another level up with fantasy baseball. So where I'm going with that is finding ways to identify the players that qualify as sleepers or undervalued, and then starting to put the research in and pinpointing, because we're going to talk about 10 names here that I might not feel are all sleepers. Vlad might not feel are all sleepers, but you guys are going to get to go in and make those decisions. So that's why we put a lot of these great things together so we can do some of the pre-work for you. And then you can dig a little bit deeper if you'd like, or maybe you really hone into something we're saying and pinpoint those guys to help your draft strategy. Because I can't tell you how many times in my early years, my 20s, when I was first playing fantasy baseball, you just go in, you're like, I'll wing this, baby. I got this. I know the players. And then you just kind of lose yourself. And it's like, what did I do? You
can't do what you used to do in your 20s.
What's this mess in front of me? So have a strategy. And there are a couple guys on this list that are a part of every single team I want to do. You don't need to talk to me about, well, if I'm doing a little risk or this type of build. Nope. There's a couple players I will take on every single build, and hopefully we can help you guys find those as well.
Vlad, it's I'm sure not early for you. I don't know how many drafts you've done, but are you somebody like because of no? But I mean, this is a great question because I think a lot of people who start to do some of the higher stakes leagues like you've done and had such success with, how do you ratio them out in terms of when you want to do certain ones? Like, are you somebody that does want to have some there towards the end of spring training so you get those teams healthier, or do you want to have the majority of them earlier because you like the early values because you read the board better than other people? What is your strategy for the high stakes and some of these players that are going to probably pop up in these conversations?
I mean, the most important thing I do is I always take a little bit of rest after the World Series. It's, a little bit of football season and just let the mind reset. And then as I begin to research and work on projections and things like that, I do start to get the draft itch. But I try to stay on a sort of a regimented schedule. I kind of know exactly how many leagues I'm going to do, what formats, and what times of the year. And so in January, February, I'm basically drafting most of these draft and hold leagues. This is where I'm learning the player pools. You got 50 round leagues. These are slow drafts, so I have time to sort of research as I go, get a feel for the player pool and everything. And then as we get into February, we're doing the experts leagues, the tout wars, industry leagues, TGFBI, those type of things. And then it gets closer to high stakes season. And when we all go to Vegas, now I'm starting to do my allotment of fab teams. And of course, even
Mhm.
the player pool and how we're looking at these guys change, right? Because even, I know we're not really necessarily talking about closers today, but in a draft and hold scenario where your team is locked for the year, a closer is much more valuable than in a fab league where you will be able to pick these guys up via
Sure.
free agent bidding.
And something I talk about a lot too is there is definitely, I think it's important to mention, so I do it a lot, hopefully ad nauseum, but it is important when I believe talking about fantasy baseball to deciphering the differences between what high stakes and what a lot of consumers are, because I think a lot of people forget, especially content creators, not saying you, but content creators forget that majority of the people you're talking to don't play high stakes, unless it's like literally a high stakes podcast. But, they're playing like Yahoo, ESPN, they're playing 12, 10 team leagues. So making sure you understand the differences when you're talking about player pools of, a draft and hold where there's closers are going higher. Elly De La Cruz is a prime example of one of the biggest differences between what draft and holds are doing to what consumer sites are already pointing out is something you can check out. By the way, I'll point out this horrific thing. I am sandwiched in tout. I just got our tout reference, our sheet, and for our league, I'm sandwiched between our dear friend Eric Cross and Vlad Sedler in
that's
tout.
that's
So
gonna go well for you.
It's horrible. What am I gonna do?
That's all right. And don't forget, everybody, too, get ready for your drafts with fantasypros.com/mock. Again, the draft wizard is open for business. You can run a simulation in 5 minutes for a draft. The multi-user draft software is open too, so you can invite other people and start to do mock drafts with other people, friends, enemies, colleagues, Welsh, whatever. Also, you can join our Discord because we'll be doing some mocks there with our Discord folks too, fantasypros.com/chat. It's free to join. So go do that. And of course, our draft kit too, fantasypros.com/draft kit, ready for you, open for business and free. So make sure you are signing up, syncing all of your leagues to Fantasy Pros. Use the tools in your draft and use your tools here at Fantasy Pros to manage your season all year long. Again, it's free and it's spectacular. Let's get to some of the names. Let's jump
Joe,
in
I just want to
here.
mention
Yes,
one
Joe.
thing. I apologize, but also in that draft kit, dynasty and prospect
That's right.
information from Welsh.
the
So
Welsh.
it's not just
Doesn't
redraft.
get
So
much
it's
better than
all
that.
drafts.
Except maybe Eric Cross. See what I did there? Because you have to draft next to him. See, I'm good. We'll have Eric on the show soon, too. Let's start with Oneil Cruz of the Pittsburgh Pirates last year, everybody's darling. Unfortunately, it was like that Family Guy sketch where it's like, and the season begins and it's over. That was kind of like the Oneil Cruz 2023 season. At least it felt like that. But this year, we're right back. He's the 67th ranked player right now. Vlad, since you're the guest, we'll start with you on this one. Do you believe that this is a player that is buyable at his current price, or do you think you're going to let him slip through your fingers to somebody else's team?
So over the years, I have become more risk averse. And a player like Oneil Cruz, and the fact that it's really hard to project, the volatility is very large, right? Because even in a full healthy season, there are things that he can hurt you in, and he can slump over the course of the season and provide you maybe a very low batting average, or could get hurt again. He's a very very active player, more so I think than most players. And the upside is incredibly tantalizing. I mean, this is a guy that could even beat out Elly De La Cruz, right? I mean, Elly De La Cruz is a second, third round pick right now. You're getting Oneil Cruz, and there are some similarities, of course, some differences a few rounds later. But he's somebody that I am interested in getting around his price, and in fact, actually dressed for the occasion.
Oh, he's got the shirt. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, the Oneil Cruz shirt is in there. How much did that set you back? That's the real question. Or is that what they gave you for winning one of the many NFBC leagues? You got a t-shirt.
No, I think it was Christmas time. It was like, I was looking, I was like, let me get a Seager Rangers shirt, a Muncie, just, a little Christmas present for myself.
A Muncie shirt? What?
Rangers.
A Muncie shirt?
I'm a Dodger guy.
Has it got a ton of holes in it? All right. Just like his swing. All right. Let's get to Welsh's take on Cruz here, because look, this is a player, like Vlad said, very tantalizing in terms of skill set, power, speed. He's got all those things. He does come with strikeout potential too. But we're talking about maybe, the aversity to risk. Cruz is the 46th player right now in the ECR. There's some guys like Alex Bregman, who's pretty, lock and loaded. You know what you're getting out of him going 5 spots afterwards. So how do you make that decision between a player like Cruz, which is so much upside but unproven, as opposed to a player like Bregman? So is Cruz a worthy sleeper in your opinion?
By the way, 68th. 68th is the average ECR, I believe. I think you said 46.
Well, I'm looking right now at the hitters. That's pardon me. So I'm looking just at the hitter comparison. So I am sort of right, and you're sort of right. We're sort of right together.
So we will stamp a buy next to Vlad, and we will stamp for me buy, absolute buy. Oneil. My biggest struggle, by the way, he actually was named after Paul O'Neill. And for some reason, I just, Oneil. I do that Oneil Cruz.
It sounds cooler to say
that. It does sound cooler, but it also makes you sound stupid when you don't do it right. Oneil Cruz is the player I want on every single team. I do not care about the build. We can talk about risk aversion and stuff like that, but as you move beyond into your draft, the risk is a lot less. What's risky is taking a player like Elly De La Cruz, who's going off 22 in NFBC drafts, top 25 player, who, yes, could be the number one overall player. Projections, even though I think it was Cardi's bat, had this like, oh, by the way, he's the most overvalued player, still almost had him at a 2040. Like, I don't know what we're talking about here. Like, there's still a value here, but we also know high strikeouts, crazy low launch angle with a not good barrel rate, which is going to lead to high ground balls. That's everything that he was last year. So we haven't seen, and he just plummeted on the back half of last year. So that's risky. As you move down, that risk aversion starts to fall. And you look at a guy like Oneil Cruz, who has made some of those adjustments. He had like a 20% strikeout rate in the few games he did play. He was running again. We saw the back half of 2022, him also make those adjustments. So the strikeouts were going. So here's my feeling on it. I think he can have a better batting average than Elly De La Cruz. I think he's a bigger power projection than Elly. I don't think he's going to take the stolen bases. I think that's something Elly can take. But I legit think that Oneil Cruz can beat him in 4 of the 5 categories. Based on NFBC numbers, you can get him 50 spots difference. Based on the others, it's probably around 20 or 30. I want Cruz on every single team because it is a power speed combo with a semi-batting average risk that I think I can make up in other spots. And I love that we've already seen improvement. I love to see the barrel rate go, but he improved his launch angle. It's solid-ish hard hit numbers that we just don't have enough of a sample size from last year. And I think he is a must-have player, so buy as a sleeper.
One last thing about him, by the way, the other part is the underratedness of the top of that offense. Like if you are getting a full season out of Ke'Bryan Hayes and Brian Reynolds, I know it's Pittsburgh. I know it's not super exciting, but it is very enticing. And, my projections or our projections, the VDPs, I mean, they are pretty reasonable for him. It might seem high, but it's really in line. If you're getting 600 plus plate appearances out of Oneil Cruz, specifically even atop the lineup, you're looking at 80 plus runs easy, maybe 25, 30 home runs, 20 to 25 stolen bases, even with a little bit of batting average ding. You're looking at a great value there.
That's a second round play. That's at least a second round player. So that's why you're getting a guy in the 4th, 5th, 6th round that has second round upside. I'm not trying to make this about slamming Elly De La Cruz, but like Elly De La Cruz, you're taking in the 2nd or 3rd round.
Feels personal.
Who could be
like
first
it feels
round,
like you wanted. It feels like to me. I just want you to know it's coming off that way.
It's kind of personal.
Anybody else?
Oneil.
Drop your comments below in the YouTube channel, please, and tell Welsh to slow his roll. Bobby Miller, the next guy on our list to talk about here with the Dodgers. Welsh, we'll start with you on this one. I always like it whenever a young pitcher has guys in front of him in the rotation. You bring in Glasnow and Yamamoto now to that Dodger rotation and take a lot of pressure off a young kid. They don't have to feel the burden of carrying a rotation, which is something I've seen weigh on a lot of young pitchers. It weighed on guys like Max Scherzer, young in their career. It weighed on Garrett Cole, right? Until Garrett Cole got to Houston and really things started to turn around. Ironically, it was Verlander at the head of both of those rotations for those two guys I was just talking about. But still, it's good to let those guys figure things out on their own, not feel that weight. Walker Buehler is going to be a guy that's going to be late to start the season, it feels like, from what we're hearing. So Bobby Miller is going to be one of the guys from the jump from day one. We know the hype around the Dodgers. We know there's a Dodger guy here we're going to talk about in a second here to him. But last year, 124 innings for him. He was 11-4. Wins are not going to be a problem for him. The ERA was at 3.76. So are you buying Bobby Miller at his current price as a sleeper, or is this another one where you think, maybe a little bit too much hype because the Dodgers are getting so much press?
We know exactly where this is going in a second.
Well, that's why I'm asking you first, because
not always.
Well, maybe not. Who knows? Let's see.
Buy. Well, this is a buy for me. This is a buy. I'll just go quick because I'd rather have more of Vlad's stuff. I've said this a lot with Bobby Miller. 5 pitches ranked 100 plus on the Stuff Plus metric. Saris's two of which, I think it was two or maybe three, were over like 125, immensely high fastball and slider. He had low walk rates last year, which you have to love, 6%. He overperformed or underperformed his expected ERA, 3.76. Expected was 3.40. High K percentage, which I actually don't think shows up enough on this plate. My only worry is the 6-man rotation. And if everybody saw, I think today they re-signed Clayton Kershaw, or it's like looming around that it's about to happen. So you've got a lot of like, Buehler's not going to start the season, and you've got Kershaw, and then you've got Paxton, and it's like, who the hell is going to pitch early? My only problem is there's a lot of cooks in that kitchen that you could, not only if you have a 6-man rotation, you don't have 2 weekly starts in, but you also could taper him back at the back end of the year. If you have a healthy Buehler, you have a healthy Kershaw, you've got Yamamoto, and you want to focus on that. I'm trying to move away from that I think with the good command, with great pitches, a power fastball, I think he could put up some big numbers. And this is one of those guys that I can pop. So for me, Bobby Miller is a buy.
Vlad, Bobby Miller?
Yes, I like Bobby Miller too. And just for the record, I am a little bit harder on my Dodgers, but I mean, you can theoretically even try to just draft all the Dodgers starting pitcher. Probably not going to work, but you usually know you're going to be near the top of your roto standings with a bunch of Dodger pitchers. Over the last 5 seasons since 2018, no team is even close. Maybe Houston, as far as like, team ERA for amongst starters. And it's such a fantastic bunch. I think everyone's going to have the same jokes. Oh, at some point, when Glasnow and Paxton get hurt, then Buehler and Kershaw will take over. One thing that maybe, since the Kershaw re-signing is so new, and even though he may not be available till the second half of the season, most likely, the underrated part there is having him in that locker room, having his veteran presence to continue to work with Bobby Miller, I think is a good thing. And then Bobby Miller himself, super talented. The guy throws 99. I think there's a little bit of growth there with his swinging strike rate. I think last year was just a little over 11%. And my system VDP has him top 25 as the 25th top starting pitcher. And if you're digging into sort of the above the NFBC 50s, and you're going into more like the $150 range entries, his ADP is even higher. So he's going a little closer to the Eflin, Grayson Rodriguez range. So he does have a lot to prove. The 6-man is a concern if that's going to be the case. But 5 great offerings. Wins aren't going to be a problem, as you know, on that team. And he's pretty solid. So I'm a fan of Bobby Miller.
Last thing I want to add, I just did a social short. By the way, if you don't follow us on any of the socials, make sure you do. Instagram, TikTok. I don't think those videos are on TikTok, but we got the YouTube shorts here. So make sure you're locked into that. The Instagram. I did a social short on ADP versus experts rank. There is no pitcher with a bigger positive difference between where they've ranked and where they're actually being drafted inside the top 100 than Bobby Miller. So he's inside the top 100, but he has the biggest difference where guys are ranking him versus where he's going in ADP. And that is, people are drafting them later than he's being ranked. He is the number 1 starting pitcher on that marker. And I think there's a lot of good positive things in his future.
A guy ranked at 105 overall, outfielder for the Texas Rangers, Evan Carter. Now, Vlad, I want to start with you on this one. Carter, obviously, good skill set, a guy that I know a lot of people are very excited about. My big concern with Carter is still the frame. Now, I've told this to Welsh many times in our discussions about Carter. I'm a little worried about him holding up over a full season with the frame he's got currently. He's one of these guys that I want to see what he comes into camp looking like. I haven't seen any pictures yet. I know it's kind of early. We're not quite at pitchers and catchers yet, but if this guy puts on a little bit of weight, that will make me feel better about that concern. But regardless, the skill set is enticing. Where he's going right now, again, he's kind of a buzzworthy sleeper guy. Is this a sleeper that you're buying or selling?
It's very difficult for me to do it at this price tag. Even he's going closer to 120, 130 in a lot of drafts I've been in lately, and I just cannot pull the trigger. I cannot pull the trigger on him over a Seiya Suzuki or a Nick Castellanos, just a little bit more solidified veterans. My problem, for example, is last year, I feel like he's being overhyped because of that phenomenal success towards the end of last season and in the playoffs. He had such a prominent roster spot or lineup spot in that order. There were things like he hit 306, but if you look under the hood, a 421, batting average on balls in play. Batting average is probably going to be closer to the 250s, 260s range. May not hit 20 home runs. Granted, he's got a little bit of speed. Those are the negatives. A little bit of positives if anything having to do with Corey Seager being hurt is not a positive. But if for whatever reason Corey Seager is not ready to start on the opening day rotation, the way that they're going to mix up the righties and lefties, Carter could get the opportunity to hit second between Marcus Semien and Adolis Garcia. But that offense has a lot of switch hitters, a lot of lefties that could move in. And if he's not doing well, he's not going to be a top half of the order guy. So I can't do it at this price. Unfortunately, I'm out on Evan Carter.
Welsh, I can't do it either. Especially Lane Thomas is right around there, which was, again, one of those players last year we were very much in on because he was free square guy. 28 homers, 100 runs scored. I'm not saying we're going to copy and paste, but 20 steals. I mean, you're giving this Lane Thomas right around the same place as Evan Carter. Like that, I'm sorry. Like there's just no way, unless it's a keeper league situation. But even then, I want to win now for the most part. So I'm a pass too. Are you making a 3 for 3 in the sweep?
I thought, because obviously you don't want these to all be, we agree on every single thing and blah, blah, blah. And I thought this was going to be the one where I was going to get to differ and be the super smart guy, but we're going to make it 3 for 3. Sell. I am a sell. You actually, Vlad, you said it really well too. What's difficult about saying the sell is the cost, the price. It's outside the top 100. And that, as I feel, as you move along the draft, the whole like, this guy is too risky, blah, 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 just becomes like less and less and less. And you are in that general range. But I personally feel that the number one rookie outfielder is going to be Wyatt Langford at the end of the year. Evan Carter doesn't hit lefties, never did. I think the stat Chris Blessing said at first pitch on a panel that I was on, their worry about Evan Carter was he had one extra base hit versus lefties between the minors, the majors, and the playoffs the entire year last year. So he destroys righties. He struggles with lefties. There is a smaller frame. I've never been he's going to be a big power guy. I do think he could be a 2020 guy. And hell, let's give a guy credit when you hit third in the World Series on the road. I was at the freaking game. Thank you to FantasyPros and all my guys getting my hookup with the right people over at Game Time and everything. But I'm not in. I'm not in on Evan Carter. I think Wyatt Langford could jump him. And you guys mentioned a whole lot of players, by the way, that just don't really float for me that I would probably rather have. So I would pass on Evan Carter. I am a sell as a sleeper.
I don't know if it's possible for us to do a show and not talk about Cole Ragans anymore. Kansas City starting pitcher. He's at 121 overall. Welsh. I want to keep this brief because there's so much of us talking about him. So I feel like you're going to be a buy here. And I think it kind of makes sense because I think there's enough upside where you feel good about what you saw at the end of last year when it comes to Ragans. So what's your thought process on him at this current value? Is he sleeper pick worthy?
Yeah, this is tough because we just did talk about him in the previous episode. If you guys didn't listen on the undervalued starting pitchers, there's a part of me that does want to say sell because it is a really big walk rate. But my argument and what makes him so interesting in the last episode is maybe like you could see with Evan Carter, he is just kind of a value. Like for all of the upside and what he did as a Kansas City Royal, he's not really being priced like the Tariq Skubal or like a lot of these other guys. He's not given that. His biggest discrepancy are the walks. I hope he changes it, but the Royals put him in a great position. Fastball location went way up. It's actually pretty decently defended team. Bobby Witt obviously covering that. I am going to say buy. I'm going to say buy based on his cost.
Vlad, you got to weigh excitement versus value on the draft board. So where does that leave Cole Ragans for you?
I mean, he is a darling of fantasy baseball people and baseball people alike because what we saw down the stretch was absolutely brilliant. And I don't know if Nick Pollock, I don't know if he listens to this show. Might
he's a huge fan. Earmuffs. He is a huge fan of ours. We know that.
Okay. Well, I am conflicted.
For the record.
Well, I'm conflicted because I am very confident where I am not confident, right? I'm not going to say, oh, I feel so strongly. There's such a big player pool. You can't say, oh, I'm for sure on this, for sure on that. You have your strong feelings and then you have your weaker ones. And I'm kind of in the middle of him. The reason why I'm leaning sell is, first of all, it's the other pitchers that go in his range. The Kyle Bradishes, there's guys with a little bit better situations. The control is a little bit concerning. He, 10.5% last season, 9% in the minors a couple years, even in AA, some struggles there. And then if you really dig in and look at the quality of opponent or lack of quality down the stretch when he was just mowing everyone down, It was super watered down versions of White Sox lineups, Pittsburgh, Oakland, Detroit, the Angels striking out at 35% clip. So I think there's going to be a little give back. I think it'll be respectable. You'll have like a 3.6, 3.7 ERA from him. Maybe you'll get better than that. You'll get a lot of strikeouts. So I am conflicted. I'm leaning on the sell. The one thing I love, last year that changeup was insane. An 11 run value, over on the Baseball Savant model, a 192 slugging percentage against. So he's incredible. Totally conflicted, leaning on the sell.
Another pitcher we're going to talk about is Bailey Ober. Before we do, though, I want to tell you what kind of psychopath Nick Pollock and Alex Fast are, because I'm in a DM with them that goes back to every single year we do a show together where the two of them, I find the players that they disagree on and we hammer it out, and then I decide who's right and wrong. It's a fun show. It's become a tradition here. We do it towards the end of the draft prep season. They were still arguing about these players well into late September, early October, even after the regular season ended. That's how nuts those two guys are, and I love them for it. They're my favorites. Bailey Ober, another guy who was on that last show too, but we want to get Vlad's opinion on him because you already kind of got ours. 5-to-1 strikeout walk ratio. This is a player I want. Those are the kind of pitchers that have success at the big league level for me, Vlad. And I think that you saw enough from Ober where not only were you excited about that, but also potentially excited about what next level could be there. And this is a guy that's going beyond Ragans here. We're talking about a 40-player difference roughly in most drafts here and some of the rankings on fantasypros.com/rankings. So, Vlad, where do you stand on Ober? Is he a better value for you in terms of sleeper pitchers?
Indeed, yes. And he's not overly sexy, like a Cole
you had
Ragans,
that one in the chamber, didn't you? You were waiting
maybe
for that one.
Maybe.
We'll
but
talk.
There are a lot of things to love about him. I mean, first of all, it's the control rate, right? I mean, he's been at 5% and right around there over the last few seasons. Last year over the last 2 years, he's made about almost 200 innings worth of starts. And he's always been outperforming his expected, peripherals. If you're looking at an ERA of around 3.3 over the last couple seasons in relation to a SIERA, xERA, xFIP, all that closer to 3.8, 3.4. This is a guy that can continue to outdo that. I think he is phenomenal. I love the home park, the division, though they'll probably play them a little less. And he's great. I mean, like an ADP in the 150, 160 range in a 15-teamer. That's around 10 or 11. He is a guy that's going to soar up the draft boards in a different way, right? Because Ragans is like the sexy big strikeouts guy. Ober still has the strikeouts, but it's about the control. If you get those like Logan Webb, Zach Eflin types, they're not overly exciting, but you load up a bunch of those guys on your team and you're going to be contributing to yourself winning at the end of the year.
Welsh, I'm already on Ober. You know that from the last show, and I think you are too. So just for those who missed last week's show, or should I say the last show we did, it's a player that just makes a lot of sense to me at the current value in terms of you're looking to build out that rotation. Seems like a really good place to start. It's not a lot of guys in this range that have the youth upside, but also enough of a sample size that you can really get excited about.
Yeah, Vlad said earlier, you don't always feel like overly confident about every single player, but I feel overly confident.
Why am I even here? I don't even want to do this show anymore.
I'm sorry. But everything. It's a command pitcher. I actually think you can make a team. I actually did in my first DC of the year. I was just like, it was Kirby, Yamamoto. I was just going these safe guys. They didn't overpower strike. I know, exactly. They didn't overpower the strikeouts or just pump out. A lot of people are pushing, 10K per nine and really high K percentages. But at the end of the day, like I feel confident with my whip, my ERA. I'm going to get wins. And Ober is that type of guy, really. So walk numbers are always elite. Strikeouts are fine. Made great usage of what he had last year. And we have seen positive development in the Twins with a rotation of all these guys. Chris Pfaadt is another one of those guys that he's going to come back this year. He looks like a fun guy to take after. I do think there's an interesting dynamic of chasing big strikeouts with a hopeful improved walk rate of Ragans versus the safety and maybe like not insane upside of Bailey Ober. There could be a strategy to your team thing that you take in play here. But you know what? Costs given, maybe I am leaning a little bit more Ragans in that sell side when you could get over 50 picks, 60 picks later, and he's a real good backbone to your rotation.
There you go. And again, get out there, start doing some of these mocks. You can see how to build your rotations out there. Sync all your leagues. Go to fantasypros.com/mock. Use the draft simulator there. Use Draft Wizard to make sure that you are understanding where these values might be, because I think it's very important. You can also, create your own cheat sheets and manage off some of the shows. And, you got great people like Vlad Sedler and all these other folks here who are ranking all over the place. You can use rankings to make sure that you can get the best out of your draft, even when you're practicing. Let's take a quick break in the action to tell you about Trophy Smack. Are you ready to make a bold statement in your fantasy baseball league? Show your league mates you mean business with the bling ring from Trophy Smack and stand out as the true champion you are. We've teamed up with Trophy Smack to bring you an epic giveaway that will take your league celebrations to the next level. To be eligible, all you need to do is subscribe to the FantasyPros MLB YouTube channel, your ultimate source for fantasy baseball insights and updates, and leave a comment on any of our videos. That's it. The best part will be announcing the lucky winner right here on the channel, so don't forget to turn on those notifications. That way you'll be the first to know when new episodes drop and when it's time to claim your prize from Trophy Smack. And now back to the action. Next guy on our list is a guy I love, Edouard Julien of the Minnesota Twins. We're going to stay in Minnesota, 182nd ranked player over on FantasyPros Welsh. First time I saw this kid was last year in spring training, that, and I was going on and on about him. Got a little cup of coffee early on, a little kind of getting your feet wet. It took him a little while to get comfortable. When he did, it started to look good. I'm trying to throw out who I think he's going to be someday. And I'm not saying he's a comp in terms of what he looks like as a player, but in terms of a statistical player. Remember Jose Vidro at second base where you just kind of locked and loaded him and you loved where he was? And you're like, this guy's just steady. I feel like Julien can grow into that kind of Jose Vidro-esque player. What do you think about Julien? Do you think, 182 seems like a value I can't pass on, but what do you think?
And we can nickname him Steady Eddie.
Maybe
Steady Eddie Julien. Steady Eddie. Oh yeah. It's funny. There's a lot of us
way better than that last thing with the Obers. You guys.
I was really trying to figure out if I could create an overtly. I was trying to do that, but I didn't want to mess it up too much. We'll stick with Steady Eddie.
I take my headphones off and I walk off the show, but I'm not going to because I know then we have to drop that whole thing where it says I'm out of the office on there. And it's a whole thing. It's a lot more.
2022, he was a monster in the minor leagues. We got to see him in the Arizona Fall League, and I fell in love with him. I fell in love with the approach, the explosiveness, talked to him a little bit. Just great guy. Ends up having what is a pretty solid chance and a great opportunity that ended up happening last year. And now with Polanco traded out, this is to set him up. Here's what I love about him. A good hard hit percentage, right around 45%. Massive walk percentage is up there, over 13% barrel rate, an improving launch angle. But here was one of the wild things about him is his strikeout rate is high, but he had one of the lowest chase rates in baseball overall. So one of the biggest problems with him, and I saw this in the AFL a year and a half ago, is he is wildly passive early on in counts and then gets wildly aggressive late in counts. And that is something he has to work on. And when you look at a guy with 30% K rate, every fantasy person on the planet wants to run for the high hill. This guy could never improve. Strikeout rate is one of the biggest worrisome things.
Yeah, but he still has 380 on base percentage.
Because he walks 15% of the time.
Right.
Yeah, but this is an instance where the K percentage I don't think tells the whole story. I've seen him in person a ton. If you watch a bunch of him, you can see it. He is too passive in early counts, and then he's playing from behind, and he's got to fix that. And I think that is something that can change. So with one of the low overall chase rates in general, what do? Be more aggressive in early counts. There is big power that's in there. I think there's 20 to 25 home run power, great OBP. I hope he doesn't become the next Carlos Santana and hits 230 with a 400 OBP. But if he makes those right changes, I think he could explode on the scene. He's also going to get the opportunity this year. So Edouard Julien, another buy for me.
Julien, a 437 on-base percentage in the minor leagues over 263 games, and Vlad, a 924 OPS. It's not a huge sample, 263 games, but to Welsh's concern point there, I feel like this is a player that, still has a lot of development to do, but already can make an impact in 2024.
Yeah, and he's another guy that it seems like a lot of people love, and I do too. Going into last season, you just knew that this is somebody that's going to be, like you mentioned, a Vidro type, just somebody that is going to be really stable over the course of the season. I do think it might take a little time to get there. I do like what you said, Welsh, about he isn't really a 30% strikeout guy. That's not really how I see him developing. He is a guy that's going to get on base a ton, but there is one major problem with a couple major problems with Edouard Julien. One is the fact that there is a lot of struggle against left-handed pitching. He, I think, It was like a 022 ISO, a 2022 WRC plus. He hit like 170 against lefties. And there's a legit chance of some platooning there going on, which will impact his fantasy value. Where might that come from, you say? Why would they play Willie Castro over Edouard Julien? Why would they play Kyle Farmer? Rocco Baldelli absolutely might. I know it doesn't sound great, but Kyle Farmer crushes left-handed pitching. Willie Castro hits them well, and he is the only guy that Rocco Baldelli has even let run. If you're just looking at like since Rocco Baldelli, the manager of the Twins, came into the league in 2019, the Twins aren't just the lowest in stolen bases and total stolen bases over that span. It's by like a lot. They're 30th in the league, but like, 70 less than the 31st. So I don't think that philosophy is going to change. I think that impacts Julian's potential production on the stolen base side. I think he hits for power. I think he's a good average guy, potentially. But I think he's a better real life player than fantasy player. And there are guys going later than him, like the guy that made space for him, Jorge Polanco, even a Brandon Lau bounce back. I mean, there are guys going later. I mean, dare I say Jonathan India? Seeing you smirk, Welch.
I mean, you could say it. Did you just call me Welch, by the way? Did you just grape Welch me?
Of course not.
Oh my God, he just grape Welched me. How insulting.
You can do whatever you want. You're the guest. It doesn't matter.
I know. The Polanco one is interesting because it's like he also goes to the worst ballpark factor out there, but there's a lot of run support. And then I could do the Polanco one. I can't do the India one. I can't do the India one because if he is in Cincinnati, I'm out. I don't know what the platoon's going to look like. I don't know what the hell that's going to look like. And we don't know where or when he gets traded. I feel like he is stuck. But you make really good points about the playing time. They also said, just to point out for a prospect side, Brooks Lee is one of their top hitting prospects. They said as soon as he shows he's ready, they're bringing him up. So they might put a Reds situation onto us where there's a glut of players that are filling out positionally. I would say I sometimes think splits get a little overdone where we focus on like, well, if this guy loses these at bats, but you know what? Like I'll take 450 at bats on the primary spot where a guy is good over 550 to 600 where the guy really struggles. That could be the difference. And I know you missed maybe some counting stats in there, but that also could be the difference of a guy hitting 290 and a guy hitting 245 if they take away. So platoons can be bad, but it also can benefit from a fantasy side. A guy that is around the 180s overall of being ranked and ADPs around the 200. This is a middle infield option. So 25 homers for a guy that gets the opportunity, that could be a value in there. But you bring up some great points. If they get into hardcore platoons and Julien does struggle, then we might be hurting.
Next guy on our list here at 192, Ezequiel Tovar of the Colorado Rockies, another infielder here, the shortstop. He had some flashes here, Vlad Tovar, last year. Obviously, the home road splits are Colorado and elsewhere. We know what that looks like. But this is also a player that did show you some upside in the minor leagues. So Tovar, again, going pretty late, very, I think, trendy name right now. Is this a guy for you as a sleeper, quote unquote, that you're buying at this price, or still just a little too expensive for you?
I'm lukewarm on the lean of, yes, I could use him. And it's really funny how much we've come as fantasy baseball people that now the Rockies are just not interesting to us, right? Like guys like
totally
Chris
I kind of blame the
Charlie
Rockies
Blackmon.
More. Can I just blame the Rockies more for that than anything else?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, you actually can probably more blame the new rules to baseball and humidored balls and making it more even playing.
Todd Helton instead of, signing Daniel Murphy to long-term contracts. I think it kind of starts to sour you a little bit on what the organization's plan is. Like their plan is to get as many guys who might be able to play a little first base and second base. That seems to be what their plan was for the last 5 years.
Well, because he also is on a team that doesn't have that great of an offense, he has a wonderful opportunity to amass counting stats atop the lineup, hitting first, possibly hitting second. He could go 2020 with 85 plus runs scored. And it's very, very likely. And again, he's in this Julien range of players. So it is a tough call. And of course, you'll play him at home. And if you have a nice mix there, you maybe play, if you have Julien on that same team, play Julien when he's up against righties and whatnot. But the problem with Tovar is a couple things. Well, one big thing, and I'll keep it as quick as possible. The guy's wild. He's like, fourth highest out of zone swing rate last season. Out of zone swing and miss rate was like over 50%, like bottom 5 overall in the league. So Tovar is a little dicey. I think he can help you with the counting stats. I think he can hurt the average pretty badly.
All right. Welsh, your take on Tovar.
Yep. This is, I feel weird about it, especially if you pay attention to projections. But Tovar is a sell for me too. I'm going to join Vlad on that one. I'm actually surprised we were on that. BatX, if you look at the auction calculator project, it's wild. He's a 13th shortstop with an almost $13 value. Based on their projections, he's got like 17 homers, 15. So I don't buy it with Tovar. You mentioned that out of zone chase, or the overall chase rate, 42% chase rate, wildly horrible. Bad hard hit percentage. He strikes out 27% of the time with one of the lowest walk rates in baseball. Okay barreling, maximized launch angle. Based where he's at, maybe he's a sleeper. I'm not going to buy it. I'm not super interested in Ezequiel Tovar, so sell for me.
All right, the last three guys we have are all pitchers, and they're all within 20 spots or so of each other. First one's Brian Wu of the Seattle Mariners, and we've got Michael King of the now Padres, and Brandon Pfaadt, Welsh's own favorite of the Arizona Diamondbacks. Now, this is an easy one for me. It's Michael King. I'm buying the most of him I possibly can. I understand things might be a little bit tougher there in San Diego this year without Soto in that lineup too, with Machado getting off to that late start. I think Pfaadt is very exciting in terms of the stuff and the upside. I'm waiting for him to corral everything. Again, he had some, moments in the playoffs, which Vlad talked about, how much we want to put stock in that. And Wu would be that other guy who's kind of, although he's going ahead of both of them, I understand why, but King is the guy of these three that I want. Welsh, Wu, King, and Pfaadt. How do you buy or sell any of them in terms of this value? Again, they're kind of in a cluster here together.
Well, I'll talk about one of them, but I'll give you my answers. Wu is a sell. I think a lot of people are buying him like he's going to be a no doubt lockdown starter. I wouldn't be surprised, by the way, if he is traded and a Blake Snell were to sign in Seattle. Wow. So I'm a sell on him. Michael King, I believe, might be the biggest discrepancy of where like I have ranked versus where like ECR and ADP is. I think a lot of that is to innings projections, but he was a monster. I'm going to save him because I'm guessing in my mind. I have no clue if this is going to happen. I feel like maybe Vlad is going to talk about him because I love him. How about I talk about the biggest homer thing I could talk about in Brandon Pfaadt? Yes, this is a buy. Michael King buy, Brandon Pfaadt buy. I know you guys can question it. Everybody was on my case about Brandon Pfaadt all year. Then what happened? Brett Strom came in, said, hey, buddy, let's move you over just a tiny bit onto the rubber. And he starts throwing a sinker. And now guess what? He's got a sweeper that's cutting across the zone better. He's got this fastball that's now hitting more inside instead of not missing. And he's got a sinker that's establishing the pitch in the playoffs. In 5 starts in the playoffs, the World Series, 26 strikeouts to 5 walks, 22 innings pitched with a 3.27 ERA on the biggest stage you can possibly have after being a loser early on, giving up all the homers, getting banged around, sweating and red all over the place every damn game he's going. And
looks like you when we went to Dave & Buster's and we had that.
100. Well, do you want to remind everybody who was the sports champion of our Dave & Buster's?
Yeah, well, you picked a basketball event and you're 6'4", so I mean, G2 was shocked.
But sweaty and just crazy, and he looks like Chris Farley out there. And guess what? He got so much better on the biggest stage. I think that pitching change was huge to him. Put 180 innings in the minors in that previous year, led the minors in strikeouts that previous year. He makes the change that you want in the playoffs. Yes, I think that Brandon Pfaadt is a crazy undervalued pitcher. He's a guy that can run an easy over 9K per 9, looks to have some walks more established. He has to figure out the home runs. That is a continuous problem with him. ERA might not be there, but I think this is a great guy that's going to get you wins. You're going to push innings, and he's going to get you good strikeouts. The change should not be ignored. So I'm a buy on Brandon Pfaadt. So that's the one I will cover. Let's see where Vlad wants to go.
So Vlad, buy or sell Wu, King, and Pfaadt, and talk to me about the one you like the most of this grouping.
I like all 3 guys. I do think in the case of Pfaadt, I mean, there is a little bit of a stink, so to speak, because of that early season. When he was called up,
all the sweating.
Oh man, we were waiting for it, and you know what? I got some backlash too because I was I was team Pfaadt all the way, and I could not wait for his appearance, and it just stung in so many ways. But you're right, the adjustments that he made and what we saw on the big stage, There was a lot of talk before the season about the shape of his fastball. It's below average and velocity and all that. Well, he made do with the sweeper, and he's the lowest priced of all three of these guys. So I think he's really solid. Not much to say about Wu other than you're right. I could foresee a possibility where if they trade for a Cease or Dylan Cease or they sign Snell, Wu might be the guy to go. But I do like him, probably the third least of the three. And by the way, I think it was I was drafting with Brian Wu's mother, maybe cousin, because he was taken in like the 8th round, around 130 overall. I don't know, in a paid draft. I don't know what was going on. And save the best for last.
Maybe it was
Michael
Ric Flair
King.
you were drafting with.
Michael King, my favorite, one of my favorite pitchers, man. Like, not only is he really good, he might even be better. And I think the whole problem with San Diego's not going to be as good, this and that. This pitching staff is pretty sick, and he's going to be a big part of that success. There are already lots of quotes from manager Mike Schilt and how much he loves him, what a gamer he is. Probably not going to be the 30% strikeout guy he was, right? Because part of that was in relief. Sure. But that stretch down the end of last season, 8 starts with a 31% strikeout rate, like an ERA under 2, change up. All of his pitches are plus pitches. He's a stud. I think he's going to make do. VDP projections has him like a 3.48 ERA and maybe I think a 27% strikeout rate. So I love Michael King. Bye.
How about this real quick before we go?
Wait. As a starter, his K per 9 was actually higher than as a reliever last year, 11.4 to 10.6. Did you know that, Vlad Sedler? I'm sure you probably did. There you go. That's why
knowing's half the battle. Knowing's half the battle.
But to that point too, Michael King, I said maybe again, I wrote him up in the black book. I was saying maybe it might not be a hot take. I think he could be the best pitcher in this rotation by the time we're all said and done. Because if you're a little worried about the shoulder of Musgrove, if we're worried about maybe this is the year Darvish doesn't bounce back. You look at, the rest of it, maybe Michael King is the guy that emerges as the guy at the front. Go ahead, Welsh. What was your thoughts on that?
Well, real quick, we'll end it with this is let's say we're at pick 130. You're getting a value on Ragans or Michael King at 130. You want Michael King or Cole Ragans?
Man, I'm going to go against the grain. I actually drafted my first Ragans because he fell 2 rounds, but Michael King was already gone. Had Michael King been there, I would have taken him.
There you go. Truth bombs from our good friend Vlad Sedler. You can check out all his incredible work over at FTN. Check out the baseball podcast there too. He does amazing work there. Vlad, thanks so much for hanging out with us today. I know you kind of got lucky/unlucky with getting a day off. Hopefully the good luck part was getting to spend quality time with us. So we appreciate you coming on the show. Go follow him as RotoGut over on the X as well. That's where you follow him. And of course, make sure you drop your comments below. We want to hear from you. What do you think about all these 10 players we laid out? Are they sleepers? Are they busts? Are they too expensive? Are they not expensive enough? We love to hear from you. So drop your comments below. Subscribe to the FantasyPros MLB channel. Because before you know it, we're going to be having more mock drafts. We're going to have more content here. Ring the bell till it goes ding for notifications. And of course, leading off is going to start in April yet again. When opening day starts, we'll be back every single day talking baseball live here on the channel. Don't miss it. It is must-see YouTube television. That'll do it for us. But the story of the game goes on for Vlad and the Welsh. I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.